Hello. I'm currently in Xsinchu, Taiwan, walking around the Xsinchu Science Park, which is considered Taiwan's Silicon Valley. And many people don't know about it, but it's actually one of the major manufacturing hubs of silicon, of chips, of semiconductors in the entire world. And I'm here to kind of walk around and see what the fabs look like, what kind of feeling I get walking around. And right now I'm just on some highway, but if I pan the camera around, you'll see these big buildings. I'm not sure if you can see it in the distance. This here, and those other buildings over there. It's all TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And they're all situated here in the Xsinchu Science Park, but they have locations across Asia, in Taiwan, other locations in Taiwan, and they're also building in the US in Arizona. Sorry if it's a little bit loud, I'm on the side of a highway. But my experience here has been a little bit odd, actually. I tried going to the TSMC museum and I didn't have a reservation, and they didn't even let me into the door to like look at like the foyer of the entrance of the museum. I got stopped even walking up the steps. And the reservations to look at the museum, they're booked months in advance. So unfortunately I couldn't get the reservation needed to tour the museum. Here's another look at one of the TSMC buildings. It says 24, so I'm assuming there's 24 of these massive buildings. I don't know if they're office buildings, but I know they do a lot of production here too. That's the main point of this. Their fabs are here. But if you don't know what TSMC does, they're basically a contractor. Like companies like Nvidia, Apple, they can contract TSMC to take the designs that these companies make, that Nvidia, Apple, they make the designs for the chips, they can send them to TSMC to mass produce them with high accuracy and yield here in Taiwan, and then ship them to where they're needed elsewhere in the world. So right now I'm walking to this huge building over here. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'm gonna go check it out. But I will say the security here is strong. And I've noticed that each of the employees walking around that I'm walking by, they all have clear backpacks too. So I guess I'm kind of sticking out with my North Face backpack. But yeah, today, the date is Monday, January 1st, or January 5th, 2026. And I guess it's kind of an odd time to be in Taiwan. A few days ago, China, they increased their exercises around Taiwan. They were doing some missile tests, increased warship activity in the area. And then of course we had Trump, not Trump, but the US military enter Venezuela and capture Nicolas Maduro for whatever reason, for drugs or whatever they say. But regardless of whether it was good or bad for the Venezuelan people, I think it says something about, I don't know, the US aggression towards sovereign nations. Like, what gives us the right to go into nations and capture their president? I think it sets a bad precedent worldwide, and also sends a message to other world powers such as Russia and China. Because what stops them from coming here to Taiwan, capturing their president? Obviously it's completely different situations and scenarios, but it's hard not to draw those parallels between the world powers. And also like Russia going into Ukraine. Like, that's not something we want to set as a precedent as a global power. But anyway, I've been walking here and we're about to arrive the outside of a major TSMC building, it looks like. Here. Let's go around here. Look at that. And that's like the 4th or 5th huge building I've seen for TSMC. Oh, this looks like it's the R&D center, so the Research and Development Center. And then over here, it looks like this is more of a fab. It's so interesting. But TSMC, it's important for so many reasons. But they're kind of at the bottleneck of all kind of modern technology. So everyone's heard the stories of Meta, OpenAI, Google. They're all building these huge data centers, right? And a lot of the talk is about NVIDIA and how they need to supply more chips so they can build these data centers and work on creating better models for AI. But the problem is, sorry, it's so loud here. NVIDIA needs to get their chips from TSMC, right? So that basically means that if we want the world's best AI, the best AI models, the best large language models, and striving for super intelligence, AGI, artificial general intelligence, you need the chips for the data centers. And guess where those chips come from? Right here, in Taiwan, in the Xsinchu Science Park specifically. It's all coming from this location. And of course, you kind of parlay that into tensions with China, because obviously China thinks that Taiwan is China. And so claims to this land are disputed. And whoever has access to these huge fabs and ability to get the most advanced chips in the world is gonna have a huge advantage in the race for the best AI. So, obviously, the implications of having the best AI in military, technology, schooling, education, it's huge. And so that raises the question, right? Sorry. It raises the question, right? So if China invades Taiwan for the sake of reunification, not only politically and for the people, for their economy, but for these chips, for the chips made here, it gives China a reason to want to come to Taiwan and reunify fully. But if China does that, the US has incentives to come to Taiwan's aid for the sake of reaching that technology first. This AI, artificial general intelligence. Because there are thoughts that whoever reaches that first will have huge global advantages in almost every industry. Also, TSMC, they actually have export controls to Chinese companies. They are not allowed to give the companies like Huawei in China the most advanced chips because of US export controls. In the US, there's this thing called the Foreign Direct Product Rule, which essentially says that manufacturing processes that use US technology at some point within the process, the US has the right to control where the end product goes. which is kind of crazy. And so obviously TSMC, they use some US technology, specifically in the chip design. They use US software. And also within the actual fabrication itself, they use some hardware. But yeah, because TSMC uses US technology, the US has the right to control where the end product goes for anything made by TSMC. So the US can restrict the most advanced chips in the world at the best yield rate and quality made here in Xsinchu. They can restrict that to China, which obviously China is not happy at. So TSMC, with their ability to produce the best chips in the world at the best rate, at the best yield, is a huge geopolitical actor, even though it's just a tech company. So China, I'm gonna stop walking here because it gets noisy up there. No, but the question is, why is TSMC the only company that can do this? That's the question, right? Like, why can't China just create these fabrication units, these manufacturing plants, and like just cut out TSMC entirely and do something domestically? Well, the issue is something called extreme ultraviolet lithography. Lithography is where the chips made here, the transistors, I'm just gonna keep walking this way. The transistors used in the chips here are created through this process called lithography, where they shine lasers and they can get transistors up to a couple nanometers wide. And there's only one company in the world who can actually do this at the highest level, and that's ASML, which is in the Netherlands. And so TSMC uses ASML's machines to create these chips here. And ASML also has certain US export controls on it to where they can't provide their machines to mainland China. So China actually does a lot of Chinese activities in which they're trying to steal IP, intellectual property, and information about this whole process for their own good, to create these machines that can do extreme ultraviolet lithography. So yeah, that's what China is trying to do, is trying to replicate all of this domestically to varying rates of success. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and highlight that not many people know about this area if you're not within like tech realms. But this is the Xsinchu Science Park, and it creates probably, I don't know the exact percentage, it's probably somewhere out on the internet, but it probably produces the chip that's in your phone that you're watching this on right now. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of this region of the world. And yeah, love to see your guys' ideas in the comments. Let me know. Thanks for watching.